prayers. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatirai Vanachari Yamunatirai Vanachari Yamunatirai Vanachari Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Now also start with a prayer by Surdas. I offer my obeisances to my spiritual master, who gave me beautiful Kantimala, effulgent tilak, the beautiful form of a devotee, and who offered me the shelter. In one of his hands he is holding my hand, and with his other hand he is holding the lamp of knowledge, which helps me to cross over the dark ocean of the material world. Surdas says my Guru deserves the greatest respect, because only he can rescue one in the blinking of an eye. I bow down to him or her again and again and again. So with that, I want to beg for the blessings of the gathered devotees, that I can read nicely, speak nicely, also hear whatever is said deeply and into my heart, that is really pleasing, in a way that is pleasing to the spiritual master, also you Vaishnavas, and the Lord himself as well. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10, chapter 42, verse 14. And I will go ahead and share the screen. Here we go. Okay. Tadarshana smarakshobhad atmanam navidam striyah visrasta vasaha kavarai valaya lekya murtayah. Synonyms: tat, him; darshana, because of seeing; smara, due to the effects of Cupid; kshobhat, by their agitation; atmanam, themselves; na avidan, could not recognize; striyaha, the women; visrasta, disheveled; vasaha, their clothes; kavara, the locks of their hair; valayaha, and their bangles; lekya, as if drawn in a picture; murtayaha, their forms. And this is translation and purported by the loving disciples of His Grace, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The sight of Krishna aroused Cupid in their hearts, in the hearts of the city women. Thus agitated, they forgot themselves. Their clothes, braids, and bangles became disheveled, and they stood as still as figures in a painting. And that stillness will be later really beautifully described as being stunned. Purport. Sriya Vishwanath Chakravarti states that since the women of Mathura immediately experienced symptoms of conjugal attraction when they saw Krishna, they were the most advanced devotees in the city. The 10 effects of Cupid are described as follows. Chakshuragaha pratmanam chita sangas tatotha sankalpa nidra chedas tanuta visaya nivritis trapa nasaha unmado murcha mritir ityeta ha smaradasha dashaiva syuhu. First, and this is the translation, first comes attraction expressed through the eyes, then intense attachment in the mind, then determination, loss of sleep, becoming emaciated, disinterest in external things, shamelessness, madness, becoming stunned, and death. These are the 10 stages of Cupid's effects. Sriya Vishwanath Chakravarti also points out that devotees who possess pure love of Godhead generally do not exhibit the symptom of death, since this is an inauspicious in relation to Krishna. They do, however, manifest the other 9 symptoms, culminating in becoming stunned in ecstasy. I already find it very beautiful how the death doesn't happen just because it would be displeasing to the Lord, because all those symptoms of ecstasy are still a form of reciprocation through service towards him, and so only what is pleasing to him can happen, and so death is just crossed out of the picture. So with that, we'll start the class, or the commentary, however we call that. So I want to draw some setting. So previously, actually it was my last class, we were reading about Uddhava coming to see Lord Krishna and his brother Balaram, and how Uddhava was meditating on how their meeting would look like in the finest of details, and how they're going to embrace, how they're going to exchange kind words, the details of these as well. I see the sun rays, it's actually very beautiful. And so now Krishna has responded to the request of his dear friend to come to the wrestling match under Kamsa's truly hateful gaze, where Kamsa is hoping with every cell of his being that the divine brothers will be killed. And as Krishna passes through the village of Mathura, he meets Tivakra, who is a village woman and a servant of King Kamsa's court. And she is responsible for supplying fragrant ointments and a luxury selection of perfumes to the king. And so in the olden times, I actually heard that from Indradyumna Maharaj. He has amazing classes on finest details of Vrindavan and the land of Bharat. And so in the olden times, in the area of Vrindavan, the perfume was made with the use of an oil only, and it was truly a labor of very intense process. And so a single drop of a fragrant oil was something only the wealthy could afford to acquire. And so in that moment, Tivakra, who is supplying those luxurious goods to the Kamsa, she is risking her position in the court of Kamsa, and there, she previously sought material sustenance. That was her service and her profession, and she actually offers much of her ointments, if not everything, to the Supreme Brothers. And it happens without a second thought of what would happen to her later as an effect of her actions, which is already a very beautiful instruction. It's a moment of surrender and love. She's throwing caution to the wind, and she shows that sense of trust that the loving relationship with the Lord is much more important than anything we can temporarily experience in our lives or temporarily have. And so in that action, she actually accepts Krishna as her master. She offers all that she has, and risks her position and essentially her life, because Kamsa is an evil king. He can do anything, even if it's not unjust, it's not justified, and what to say about an action that is actually an infidelity towards him. And so she feels a lot of attraction towards the Lord and his brother, and just offers her perfumes. And then Krishna stands on her toes and lifts her up and straightens her bent form into an extremely beautiful, effulgent woman with his touch. And that touch awakens a lot of attachment to him in her, and greatly disturbs her mind. And in a similar fashion, it brings intense emotions in other residents of Mathura who are seeing the Lord as well. And so they're completely enchanted and in love with Krishna and Balaram. And in that way, it's also really mind-blowing, because each living entity is able to fall in love with Krishna and have an independent relationship with him. And so we are very fortunate to have a chance to know him through the scriptures and through the devotees who already attained pure love towards him, and to develop access, or to have access to develop love towards Godhead. And so here it's actually also really beautiful, because in the purport to the verse, it shows clearly how God realization is actually a scientific process. It's not something sentimental. It's not something that is questioned, and it's not ambiguous. And this verse very clearly points to it. It shows the supremacy of Srimad Bhagavatam, even as a text showing the human psychology or emotional development. And then it taps into transcendence when it's shown in relationship to Krishna. And so I want to break down these stages of development of love, and Cupid's ways. And so it's described that first comes attraction expressed through the eyes. And that's what we can tap into when we see the deities. And we want to come closer to the deities because they're so beautiful. And through that attraction that we experience, we want to admire the details of the darshan, the details of their face expression, the dress, the ornamentation, the garlands, the colors, the textures. And then there is the intense attachment in the mind, which is thinking about the Lord and his devotees, constantly chanting the name of the Lord, and always seeking ways to serve at all times. And that reminds me of how gopis often walk through the forest. In many of the pastimes with Krishna, when they are going towards meetings, or they are just wandering through the forest of Vrindavan, they actually naturally pick flowers on the way as they walk through the forest, and already plan to string them to make them into a garland and offer it later for the Lord. In this way also they assist Srimati Radharani. And then comes determination, which is also described as enthusiasm, or similar to enthusiasm. And determination and enthusiasm and sincerity are our most powerful assets in devotional service. Because no matter what happens, we have control over our sincerity and over our enthusiasm. And if we willingly let go of our enthusiasm to serve and chant the holy name and truly please our spiritual masters, then we really have nothing left. And that reminded me of the saying, like, if they wanted to, they would, which is often thrown around that I hear. And that is really truly there, because it's repeatedly said that there is no impediment, no material impediment to practicing devotional service and attaining the goal of devotional service, which is pure love of Godhead. And we see that many times. I've heard stories of mothers giving birth to their children and being in like extremely long labor process and still committing to chant their rounds throughout that. And I've heard stories from one of the books that we have in our movement. Is called Salted Bread, and how it's about the devotees spreading Krishna consciousness behind the Iron Curtain, and how when they were imprisoned and were given almost nothing to eat, they would actually make beads to string later into japamala from bread that they just put together with water and even saliva, and then just strung into their chanting beads. And so really it's just incredible how we see those acts of devotion, and even those obstacles can really become that way of hankering towards the Lord. I've heard recently a story that really touched me, that there is a community member in a temple in Alachua, and she would drive I think it's every week, or at least like regularly, for 12 hours, just so that she can take darshan of Radha Shamsundar and admire their beauty and connect with them and show herself to them. And I also heard a saying which touched me, and I feel like it's comes here very, very handy in my mind, and it's beggars are not choosers. We are truly beggars. And if we are to tap into the role of a servant, that means that we again need to preserve our enthusiasm and carry on our service through no matter what happens, and to mold ourselves as servants to the master instead of the other way around. The next aspect is the loss of sleep, in the Cupid's way of taking over the heart and the mind and the body. And because there's that intense sense of waiting and mental agitation and deep meditation on the object of love, on Krishna, then is becoming emaciated. And that is often described in the pastimes of the divine couple, how when the Lord leaves, Srimati Radharani is just becoming so emaciated that her bangles and her jewelry and her dress is just no longer holding on to her body. Because in that situation, in that scenario, nothing else matters but the object of love. Nothing else matters but seeing the beloved Lord Shamsundar. And this is the sustenance of the devotee's life. So if the sustenance of the devotee's life, which is connection of Godhead, is missing, it means that there is no reason to live or to keep up the body. Then there is this interest in external things, which is again the complete focus. And then there's shamelessness and madness, that intense need to see the Lord, foregoing all other rules and one's image. Just like the gopis are leaving their babies, which are their breastfeeding, or they are leaving their duties at home to their husbands. They are just running out of the door to see the Lord. And then the last one, because the death is crossed out, it's becoming stunned. And that's when there is so much hankering to see the object of love. And when one finally sees, the object of love. They cannot contain their emotions. And that darshan just creates an experience of being in complete stillness and being stunned. To really take in like that image and that vision with its the entire being of a devotee. It's sometimes, and it's material, but we see the reflection of the material world, or the material world is the reflection of the spiritual world. But even in movies, there are sometimes the scenes of like seeing somebody and falling in love, which is what the Cupid does, or seeing Cupid, the personification of Cupid, which is the Lord Krishna. And oftentimes in the movies there's that scene of somebody just like looking at somebody and then just completely stopping, like their whole being is still, and that's that material representation of becoming stunned. And that is the rundown of that beautiful experience of really experiencing the highest love towards the Lord. And that brought me into the Antya Lila, one of the verses, which actually is repeated quite a lot during the month of Damodar, and I want to bring it here because again it brings us back into the relationship with the holy name and how we can develop this perfection through chanting the holy name, which is not different from the Lord. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables of Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within the mouth. We then desire many, many mouths. When that name enters the holes of the ears, we desire many millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all the senses become inert, which is again becoming stunned through chanting the holy name and the connection of the holy name. And here also in this verse or in this pastime, what is very clear is that there are only two ways to always meditate on something or someone. One is by hating them or the person or the thing. The other one is loving. And in this situation, Kamsa is the person who hates, and it's even hard to say, who hates Krishna. And then the gopis and the women of Mathura, they are loving the Lord. And so we have a chance to tread in the footsteps of the Parampara, who are always in contact with the divine couple, and we have a chance to choose to actually always remember the Lord lovingly. It is said that when Krishna disappears from the sight of the gopis, they cannot bear it so much that what they do next is actually playing out and acting out the pastimes of the Lord. And what's really interesting is that they would play out the pastimes of the Lord even when he is interacting with the demons or killing the demons, and those who are actually against the Lord or really wish him wrongly and want to hurt him. And how is it that the gopis who are deeply meditating on the Lord are able to create that? And actually, the truth and the response of the acharyas is that they cannot, because to even meditate on having that antagonistic demeanor towards the Lord is just completely against their being, and they would rather die. And so in that situation, actually, Purnamasi herself expands herself to play the demons and to play all those who are antagonistic to the Lord, so that the gopis can continue to meditate on the Lord, but they don't need to take on those roles. And that's really a beautiful example. It's that even thinking about something against the Lord is just completely painful and impossible to hear or to bear. And so the choice here is again very clear. Kamsa is living his life out of fear and is so attached to sense gratification. And again, there is that Kamsa in in our conditioned self. And Krishna stands in the way of that sense gratification. And yet he is defeated by his own conditioning and his own fears. And the gopis are overtaken by love. They have conquered the heart of their beloved Lord, and they experience the absolute highest pleasure of being a menial servant and always wanting to please their master. And in that way, again, it cannot go unsaid that Srimati Radharani, Vrindavan Ishwari, she is the queen of service. And yet Krishna is also very kind. He facilitates remembrance and forgetfulness. And as he himself states in Bhagavad Gita, and because he wants a loving relationship with each living entity so deeply himself, he facilitates the remembrance of him. I heard this one line that I've been meditating on for past probably 2 weeks, and I feel like it's very potent. And I heard it from Swayam Bhagavan Kesha Maharaj. Some love Krishna because he's God, and others love God because he is Krishna. And I feel like this is a beautiful choice that we can again make. And how amazing it is that we get the chance to have that incredible personal relationship. And with that, I want to bring some practicality. I want to read a verse from a book that you probably all know, which is The Nectar of Instruction by Sri Rupa Goswami. And it's incredible because it's a small book that actually is everything we need to attain perfection. And so I want to read you the verse 8 as a way of bringing it back into our practice. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Golaka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees, who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Just again, our perfection, to be so attached to devotional service. So all glories to Sri Rupa Goswami and Sri Prabhupada. And I had a passage also from The Journey Within about awakening divine love. As the infinite charm of the beloved one awakens in the heart, the mind is irresistibly drawn to his form, pastimes, teachings, and love. That's again Rupa Goswami. And here is a passage that I really admire. The soul's ultimate potential is to taste divine love. That experience is realized when we are so absorbed in loving service to the Supreme and compassion for others that we transcend our own desire to be happy. In such a state, we are truly lost in love, and we realize the inner truth of the phrase, in giving, we receive. This ecstatic love is dormant within each one of us. Bhakti Yoga has 5 components, 5 potent timeless practices that help the practitioner to awaken this love, which is all we know. We all know that, but we need to be reminded, or I need to be reminded. 1, living in a sacred space, or tuning into grace. 2, spiritual relationships and spiritual community. 3, chanting the holy names of God. 4, hearing from sacred literatures. And 5, worshipping the Lord however you know him, with faith and veneration. And with that, I would like to conclude with the verses from Vrindavan Mahimamrita, which again tap into that topic of meditating on the Lord, of remembering Him, of serving Him, and developing love towards Him. And so I will be reading from verse 23 to 27. When patiently tolerating hundreds of kicks, millions of insults, and the constant onslaught of hunger, thirst, cold, heat, and hundreds of other sufferings, penniless, agitated, shedding a great shower of tears, and calling out the names of Sri Sri Radha Krishna in a piteous voice, will I wander in this land of Vrindavan? Today or tomorrow, this worthless material body will leave me, and all the material happiness connected with it will also leave. Because material happiness is temporary, it should be understood to be only a mirage of the real happiness. O my mind, please abandon this false happiness and enjoy the real, eternal happiness of devotional service within the land of Vrindavan. And again, we can create Vrindavan, because wherever we chant the holy name, this is Vrindavan. How important are the most powerful earthly kings for us, like Kamsa? How important are all the demigods and sages? How important are countless material opulences which come and go like the scenery in a dream? How important are even the liberated devotees in the spiritual realm of Vaikuntha for those of us who have made residing in Vrindavan our only goal of life? May Sri Vrindavan, which grants auspiciousness and bliss to all, and which is deeply loved by 2 or 3 great souls, become the mother and protectress of the blind me. May I love Vrindavan, where at the base of a Kadamba tree, on the cool shore of the Yamuna, a dark-complexioned, amorous, divine youth, dressed in yellow garments, plays a flute as he glances at Radha's lotus face. With that, I will conclude. Thank you so much for your attention and hearing through your ears and to your heart. And I would like to invite you for reflections, corrections, comments, questions, anything else you would like to offer into our loving circle.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, Ananda Manjari. Very nice. I had a question about, we hear that Krishna is conquered by the love of the gopis, especially Mother Yashoda in the month of Damodar. It's kind of like the main thing that, she conquered him through her love and tied him up. But how could we understand that he's conquered by their love and at the same time left all of them against their will? Apparently left, you could say.
Yeah. He actually does it to glorify his devotees. He leaves the devotees so that they can tap into even the deeper aspect of love, which is the love of separation. And so when one is with the object of the love, or when they are with the Lord, they take in the Lord and again experience all the ecstasy that comes with it. But when Krishna is gone, they actually see him everywhere around them. And so in that way, they're cultivating even more of the aspect of separation. And that is a way of him allowing even them to be glorified in their love. There is a pastime that we were actually celebrating at the beginning of the month of Damodar. The first day of Kartik is where one of the most important Rasa Leela happenings occur. And in that pastime, Lord Krishna leaves with Radha, and then the gopis see the footprints in the ground, and then there are, the camps of the gopis. There are those which are supporting Radharani's rival, which is Chandravali, and they're like a little bit angry that he left with Radharani. Then there are those which are quite neutral and they only care about Krishna, so they don't really matter who he left with. And then there are those who support Radharani and they're like so enchanted and amazed and happy that he left with Radharani. But as Radharani walks away and she's experiencing all the love, towards the Lord, she's actually very worried that the gopis, are left, that Krishna left and he's choosing to be with her, but then they're alone, and she orchestrates a pastime of tapping into a little bit of pride that she exhibits. And through that pride, Krishna disappears again. So that's our lesson, that we are really to tap into humility. But as Krishna disappears, it's again a form of allowing her to be glorified, because the moment he is gone, she just drops on the ground, actually so effulgent on the forest grove, and she's just screaming, like, when can I see my Lord again? Like, where is Shamsundar? Why can't I just see him? And the gopis find her again, even if it's the middle of the night, because she's so effulgent through her love. And then again they see, this is the highest love. Like, we cannot match this. She's such an amazing devotee. So in that way, it's always for the sake of love. Nothing that the Lord does is outside of love. I hope it answers your question. Hare Krishna, Adipur Prabhu, my obeisances.
It's impossible for us to improve on the very, very sweet and beautiful class that you just gave. We can pray to Prabhupada to help us contribute something. The first 4 words of the reading were, when someone sees Krishna. And the whole thing is about what happens when someone sees Krishna. But we're always, there's nothing but Krishna to see, but we don't see Krishna as Krishna. That's the problem. These 2 men came in the temple room, and they were looking at the floor. Oh, hardwood floor. And they were looking at the wall of the temple, and then they looked at the deities were open. And they said, "Oh, marble." And then they walked out, And then this little Indian lady came in, and she offered obeisances, and she went up in front of the deity. She was kneeling down with folded hands, and tears were coming, and she was seeing Krishna. They weren't seeing marble, she was seeing Krishna, And I was thinking of that pastime with Dhruva Maharaj. He was meditating, and then Krishna appeared to him, And one of his realizations was, first of all, Krishna loves me, and Krishna is so beautiful, and I'm so attracted to him when one sees Krishna. This happens. And then he realized that Krishna had been there all along, and that before that he wasn't seeing Krishna. And so the purification, the chanting, the meditation, the bathing, the fasting that his spiritual master gave him helped him to purify his mind and senses so that he wasn't distracted by other things. And then he realized that Krishna is here, and how wonderful is Krishna. And sometimes if there's a puddle and it's all stirred up and there's mud in the water, you can't see, but then when the water settles down and it's clear, you can see all the way to the bottom. So we're in a muddled condition of distraction and agitation. And then Srila Prabhupada so kindly, our spiritual master, is helping us to become purified to the point where we actually can see Krishna. And how wonderful is Krishna. Anyway, I'm not sure if that was a contribution. No improvement on your class was so fantastic. Your spiritual master is empowering you. Thank you so much. Well, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, we love you.
It reminds me of what Prabhupada said at the installation of the deities in New Dwarka in Los Angeles. And he said, if you want, these deities will always be metal, like brass to you. But if you choose to develop a loving relationship with them, they will talk to you. Thank you. Dima Prabhu, are you there? I see you being released.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo Prabhujini. Maharajini. Every class, I always take away at least one little thing. because that's all I can hold. And I take away from your class your wonderful, soft voice saying probably the most important 4 words that can be said in this particular pastime. Krishna lifted her up. So I just, when, we're either up or down in this world, as the devotees, we're up when we know that we are remembering Krishna, even in separation. But that we also have to understand, being the giver of knowledge and the giver of remembrance, that it's Krishna himself who gives us our ability to even remember him if we are sincere, and that it is Krishna who lifts her up. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. It's such a beautiful reflection. Any other contributions?
Wonderful class, Ananda Manjari. You said something about Radharani being the queen of service. Was that the epithet that you used?
Yes.
The queen of service. Yeah, that's my takeaway. 2 words, the queen of service.
Yes.
Thank you very much for allowing us to experience that very elevated emotion that you certainly have. So thank you for inviting us in your world.
Thank you so much.
Ananda Bihari is the queen of service in his own home.
Yeah, I'm on my way to work. Some toilets need to be cleaned. So I'm That's a good one.
Service. Yes, it's actually Ayendra Prabhu said that in one of his classes. How we are so fortunate because Radharani is the topmost. I guess I'll cut it here.
Stop your car, turn on your camera, greet the Lord.
Die. Yeah, yes, amazing.
Thank you, Ananda Manjari. Thanks everyone for participating. This was the class. Do we have anything for Afterglow? Any closing remarks, Ananda Manjari?
Yes, I want to finish what I said just before because I find it to be important. So what I've heard is that Srimati Radharani is a perfect lover and servant of Krishna. She's a topmost, actually servant in the way that it's like she loves so much that she is completely embodying the mood of service. But because of that, and because the service is an ever deepening mellow, our devotion service is an ever deepening mellow, and love towards the Godhead is also ever deepening and expanding, she is never satisfied with her service. And because of that lack of satisfaction, this is our greatest blessing, because this way we are engaged in service to the Lord, because she wants to expand that service and she wants to engage everybody, both being the most humble and the most exalted. And so in that way, we are just invited into this loving service that actually could simply be performed all by herself and through her incredible potency. But instead, through her humility and through her mercy, we are engaged and we are able to attain the success and perfection of our lives.
That sounds a lot like my wife. She's never satisfied with the amount of service that I do. She's always trying to engage everybody in maintenance and other service around the house. Thank you, Ananda Manjari. This is very relatable. Bhakti is very relatable.
Yes, thank you. And I feel complete here. If there's anybody else that would like to share anything.
Any final share? Before I crash the car. Okay. All right, so it's Saturday. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Drive safely. Remember Krishna. Always seek service and come again tomorrow. Thank you for your association. We love you. Hare Krishna, Ananda Manjari, wonderful class. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.
Krishna lifted her up.
Yes.